Hi, my name is Vince, and I am going to attempt to do some minor repair to my Nano Excel hull. This is my ski. It's a 2010 FX SHO, and it's ridden a lot and in a variety of places, so it's bound to get some scratches. And it's getting to the point now, though, where I think that I need to do some things about it. So let me give you a view as to what the scratches kind of look like. What you're looking at here is the length of the hull, and it's kind of hard to see with a lot of the glare that's happening from the lights. You got to have them, obviously. And but if you look at the keel, you can see that it's very much worn down the length of the keel. Here's a closer look at it, and it extends obviously a little bit out to the side somewhat. I'm not going to worry too much about these smaller scratches out here. I'm just going to kind of let those go, and in future repairs take care of that. All I care about is the big stuff at this point. Okay, so that's kind of the keel part of it. I'll work my way down, and you can see down near the pump tunnel, it's showing some fiberglass in these areas, and so I need to buff that out, get it relatively smooth, and then start glassing back up through this away. This is on the other side where I have a couple of gouges. They're probably about 4 to 6 inches in length, and they're rough, so I'll have to smooth those out and use some epoxy with filler on that. Now, just to kind of let you know, this is not an instructional video, because to do that you'd have to assume that your instructor knows what the heck he's doing. No, this is kind of a video for you to watch how I do it, and then we can let other people give advice and make comment on how I should have done it better. I tend to learn more from my mistakes and failures than I do from my successes anyway, so that'll be okay. And like I say, I just want to protect the structural integrity and not so worried about how real pretty it's going to be, because to do that you have to get into painting and things like that. These gouges will be my first point of attack to try to do my repairs. And what I'm going to do first is I'm going to go ahead and sand them down so that they're somewhat smoother, and then I'm going to put masking tape around them so I don't spread the mess any more than necessary. And then I'm going to mix it up, and I'll go ahead and put it on there. We'll see how it goes. I'll take a picture when it's prepared just before epoxy. Now, to get started, I went to West Marine. I've also researched how to use this stuff online from YouTube videos that West Marine has out there. But I'm being helped a lot by a guy that I've never met, but, well, I guess I've met him online. His name's Captain Riva on the Green Hulk forum. So he's given me some tips and pointers to get me started and given me a little bit of confidence, and he's there to help me online. I took some pictures and things, and he's told me kind of how to attack each area. So that's pretty much stuff. You'll see a list of all of these repair things, but basically what I did was I went to West Marine and bought everything in the aisle. I figure what I don't use I can return. To prepare, now in my garage I have a plastic mat that's pretty much impervious to anything, but I will put down some drop cloth from the work area, and then I also made it so that I have something soft to be able to sit my back on. You'll also notice that I propped the bow up really high. I don't know if you can see it with the light, but the bow's been propped up to give me just a little bit more room to scooch up underneath in there, and that'll work out just fine, I think. Okay, so now I have lightly sanded both those gouges so that they're nice and smooth. It's a little bit more enhanced. It looks like little bits of pockets underneath in here. That's actually pretty smooth, and I think the filler will take care of that okay. Same thing going all the way down this length. So what my next thing I'm going to do is I will wipe this all down very thoroughly with acetone, and then I'm going to mask the area to keep my runoff from getting all over the place. Now, up here on the keel, I've also sanded some of that just to get it smooth and to remove any dirt. Okay, so what I've done up to this point is I've completely sanded down those areas, got them as smooth as I possibly can without going in any whole lot deeper, but it's very smooth, and it's feathered out to the good materials. So I'm going to go ahead and mix some epoxy up and apply it with a brush. Is the only thing I know what to do next. By the way, I cleaned it with acetone very thoroughly so that a white rag would wipe it and have nothing come off onto it anymore. So it's very clean. So that's the next step, and I'll take another picture when it's done. So being my first time, what I did was I did basically one pump of the 105 resin into this little cup. Using a stirrer, I then mixed in some of the hardener, which I am in this case using 406. I don't know which one to use. I'm just going to try it and see how it does. Now I've done that and gotten it to the consistency where it's a little bit more of a pasty type of thing, like thick peanut butter, rather than too fluid. Oh, by the way, I also add just a drop of the black colorant, which is plenty, enough to turn just, you know, one little pump of the epoxy into black. So we'll see how that goes. Now I'm going to put the hardener in, and that's when kind of the clock starts ticking for me to be able to get it applied and spread out and all that kind of fun stuff. My intention is to try to apply it with this brush, which is kind of a, I don't know what kind of brush it is, but it's just a brush. Not very big, but then my gouges aren't very wide, and I can just kind of get it into depths and crevices with this, and spread it out so there's no bubbles or anything like that. Obviously, I want to put it on so that I have gone over the edge of the gouge, and I can, once it's cured, sand it down. So here are the gouges on the side where I had used epoxy with a 406 filler. Not sure if I used the right filler, but what my concern is that it seems that after overnight, well, this one's pretty dang on hard as a rock. But I noticed that this one down here, which is ever so still slightly tacky, and I don't know why that would be different. These all seem to be fine, but for whatever reason, this one here is just curing slower. I can feel a little bit of tackiness on my finger when I touch them. These two, and they were all from the same batch of epoxy filler, are hard as a rock and not tacky at all. So I don't know. I might try using a hair dryer to cause them to cure up a little bit better and faster. Now, I was experimenting just kind of what I could do about small scratches. And so my intention was I just took some of the epoxy after I'd cleaned everything, but I didn't mask this one spot. I just wanted to see if I could do very quick and easy repairs, and then of course I would take a wet sand and sand this down to smooth. But the net of it is that I don't think I like the way that came out either, but it's not a big deal. It's on a part of the hull that you're really not going to see, and I'll make it nice and smooth before I'm all done. So that's the deal there. Okay then, well, I got a little bit anxious and decided to go ahead with the keel since I was out here and have the time today. And what I did was I just decided to do a 1 foot section to see how I do. And then if I screwed it up, I'd have less than, whatever, a 4 or 5 foot section to try to fix. So net of it is that I cut out you can't hardly see it because everything's black now, but I cut out about a 6-inch wide by about a 1 foot long piece of fiberglass, and I wetted it out. First I put a little bit on the hull and let it get a little bit tacky, and then I wetted it out onto a piece of cardboard, and from there I just took it by hand and I put it onto the hull, which is where it's at now. Once I got it up there pretty decently, I used a squeegee, just a piece of plastic, and squeezed all of the bubbles out of it and made sure that it wasn't drippy. Now, the thing that's concerned to me is that like these very edges, and I don't know if it can show up on the camera, there's strands of fiberglass that are out of there. Now, I don't want to go cutting on them or pulling on them at this point, because I know that if I do, it'll probably pull the whole mat down. So I've decided to kind of leave it alone, and well, we'll just have to see what happens next. Now, you can see there is this one piece of fiberglass just hanging down, and I'm just going to leave that there for now, and I'll cut it off here in the next, you know, when it cures or whenever. It doesn't really matter, I don't suppose. Now, one of the things I did discover is that when I do put it up there, it seems to work best if I use my glove-covered hand to smooth it out and get it contoured to the hull the best that I can, because my hand can contour edges and rounds and things like that, whereas the straight edge of the piece of plastic is going to tend to knot. It's going to be squared. So I think I did a pretty decent job of getting all of the bubbles out and getting a fairly uniform consistency of the epoxy in the fiberglass mat. Okay, this is the next day after everything is cured overnight. I was already out here just for a few minutes just checking things, and I'm pretty happy with how the keel area has come out. I'll try and zoom in on that a little bit, and as you can see, it's on there pretty smooth. There are no bubbles, and I have already gone over a little bit with sandpaper. I was just kind of curious to see how the edges were, and I did notice that I had missed yesterday this long strand of fiberglass right here that I know that I'll have to either scrape it off or cut it off or do something with it, but obviously that wasn't good. Here's another little one here. But anyways, it's on there pretty good, and it's obviously very solid. I mean, this stuff is terrific. Pretty happy with how that's turned out. Now, on the gouges that were on the side, I'm a little bit concerned. Let me show you those. So today, I'm going to continue down the hull. I'm going to wait on those gouges on the side for a while and see if that one cures up better. And maybe after I talk to Captain Riza, maybe he'll give me some advice as to whether I should use the hairdryer or not. Anyways, going to work on the hull. This is kind of the area that I'm going to be shooting at. And what my plan is that I'm going to start from the 6-inch width that I had when I did this first test pattern here, or test patch. But I'm going to taper it down towards the bow of the hull, so that it comes actually to where it's only about maybe about a 2-inch or a 3-inch area here that's going to cover the keel area. That'll reinforce the fiberglass on the keel, and also make it a lot smoother. This is really not all that bad, I don't think, because I can't feel, and I couldn't even before I had sanded the edge between the black and the fiberglass itself. So I think it's basically just worn down the paint and the top coat more or less, but we're going to build it back up. So I'll get that on there. I'm going to go ahead and cut it, and this time I'm going to show how I'm doing the fiberglass mat, because it is more. I didn't show it on the back patch because I was kind of experimenting, and it's hard to hold the camera and experiment at the same time. But now that I think that I have sense as to what I'm doing, I'm going to try and get it onto the camera. Okay, I've pretty much I've cut my fiberglass cloth to size, and I've tried it on up there. It's hard for me to hold the camera and it at the same time, but I'll show you best I can. Here's the fiberglass cloth piece, and it's basically starts at about 2 inches and it works its way back to 6 inches, and it's about 30 inches long. Now, Captain Riza had suggested that there was a professional that had recommended to him that on a long piece like this, that once I've wetted it down with epoxy, is to roll it onto a roller and then roll it out. I had tried doing that just with it dry, and I'm not real comfortable with it. I think that if I were doing multiple layers of fiberglass cloth, then that would be a great idea, but it's just too simple to just hold it and stick it on up there with my hands. So that's what I'm going to try to do. So let me just give you a picture of how this is going to go, if I can. It's basically going to lay up on the hull from that end over to the, it's not going to work, but anyway, you get the idea. Okay, so here I am laid out with my my fiberglass cloth. I'm going to trim off any rough edges to it as best as I can. I know I'll have more by the time I get it wetted down and up there. But I've already put 3 pumps of epoxy resin into my cup. And from there, of course, the next step is going to put a little bit of color into it, just a drop or two, and then the hardener. Now once I've done that, then I'll, like I did yesterday on that other pieces, I'll just get it a little bit wet on the hull and let it get just the slightest bit tacky, and it should be able to stay in place by doing that. And then I will wet down all of this fiberglass cloth and get it on up there, which you'll see next. Okay, this did not go nearly as easy as the one I had done yesterday. Obviously, because it's a much longer piece, and I should have really done it in 2. Had I done it, if I had to do it over again, that's what I would have done. I started from the back and worked forward. Just even being able to get it in place, because once you get it up there, you really can't pull it around too much, otherwise all the fiberglass strands just start coming apart on you. As a matter of fact, if you look real close towards this end, you'll see where I didn't even match it up to the edge of the other cloth that I had already laid. I'm going to let that go for now. I might leave it alone, or I might put another piece of cloth in there and just go that route, or maybe even use a little bit of filler. The net of it is that this was much harder. I should have done it in 2 pieces. Sorry, the sun is coming through that window over there. So that's the deal. It's on there. Now what I did though is I used a foam roller to basically, after I had smoothed it out the best that I could without tearing the fiberglass apart, I used a foam roller to get out all the excess epoxy so that it's not just dripping down off of there, and it gives me a little bit smoother finish to work with later on. So up to this point, that's about all I can do until I figure out about the 2 gouge, or that 1 gouge that doesn't seem to be curing up right. It's just one kind of like last view. You can see I've gotten a little bit of overrun on the part that I'm not wanting to fix. So I'm going to use acetone to clean that up a little bit and go from there. Now, just because I forgot to mention it earlier, before I put that cloth on, I had cleaned it again with acetone, just to make sure that any residue from the sanding I had done earlier hadn't gotten in there. So that's the deal. As for that 1 gouge that didn't seem to want to cure up, it is cured up now nicely. And so I'll smooth that out, sand it down, see if there are any valleys to it, and smooth. And if I have to, I'll mix up some more epoxy with filler. But I need to go ahead and get after it. The other patches turned out actually very, very nice. So you can see that they're perfectly smooth. They're right in line with the original hull material. So that's going to get a little bit more work, but not much. And then I'll put some paint over the top of that. This is just going to be quick spray paint, a little bit of clear coat over the top of it, just to make it look pretty. Not intended to make anything perfect. So that's the deal. This is not coming out nearly so well. This is where the gouges were on the side, kind of down by the strake of the hull. It's very hard for you to see. Let me move the light around a little bit, and let's see if we can get it in here a little bit better. It looks pretty good for most all of the spots that I did, except that one, remember, where it was difficult to cure, and I have been working on sanding this thing like it's going out of style. And you can see how rough it looks. For whatever reason, I didn't do a good job on that one. And I don't know that I'll do anything about it right now. I might, next time I have to do this process, I'll just maybe even grind it all back out and start all over again. So that's what that looks like. That looks white in the picture. It's not white. It's obviously, you're seeing mostly reflections. But it's not smooth. It's nowhere close to smooth, and that's with a considerable amount of sanding. If you look everywhere else, up and down, where I fix those gouges, they're perfectly smooth. As a matter of fact, they've disappeared. Okay, well, here we are back in the garage, seeing how the work from yesterday turned out. I'm semi displeased, but not totally displeased, and mainly the only reason why was because I did this as one long strip. It's about 30 inches long, and in the process of doing that, I think I frayed the edges of the fiberglass cloth a little bit, but that will all sand out and it'll be nice and smooth, and then when I paint over it, then it'll be pretty much invisible. But as you can see, I've already attacked it a little bit with some sandpaper. I used just to start getting the edges down of the fibers. I went after it with a 100 grit sandpaper, and once I have the fibers kind of smoothed out, then I'll go ahead and I'll go after it with a higher grit and get it all polished up nice and smooth. Of course, I got to do that all the way down the length. So that's where it's at right now. It seems to be progressing pretty well, and we'll see what Riza says about it over online. But net of it is, it is what it is, and it will be just fine. Down here, as you can see, I missed a spot with the fiberglass mat between the two pieces. So I don't know if that's going to show up very well, but the net of it is that I'm going to get all the rest of this sanded down and somewhat prepped, and then I'm going to fill in that gap that I created between the two fiberglass mats, which will be very, very easy. So that's the deal. Now it's just a matter of most of the fiberglassing is done, or the epoxying I should say is done, and now it's a matter of sanding and smoothing, and then putting some paint over the top of it. Okay, well, here we are in the garage again, and continued sanding and sanding and sanding and sanding. I've gotten it about to as far as I dare go. There are still some little spots where you can see that some strands got loose on me. They're pretty flat, but I know that'll show up in the paint, but I don't care that much about that. I don't know how to get them down any further without really getting into the material, and that would be kind of counterproductive to what I'm trying to do. I'm just trying to get my repairs done. So that said, everything is very smooth. It's been sanded and sanded. It hasn't been wet sanded at this point. I don't think I'm going to do that. I think it's super smooth. I've cleaned it with acetone, and now I'm going to go ahead and just do a little bit of test spraying back at the very end towards the pump tunnel. While I'm waiting for that to dry, and I have about a half hour, I figured I'd go ahead and talk about paint for just a second. I did get this, I posted where I bought it from. And like I said, the guys that I went to, they were actually able to look up the paint code from Yamaha. I don't know if you can see that, but you'll see it in the picture. The OEM codes, etc. And he also put it on a spectrograph. It's funny, it says BMW Motors on it, but anyway, so it's probably because of the label. And but they were very helpful. Not only did they find the code, they also did a spectrometer match to make sure the code was a match to what was on the ski. And it was very close. They made a minor modification, and I'm telling you, that black is exactly the black that's on the ski now. This is the clear coat, which is real interesting too. It's a two-part, obviously, a base coat and the clear coat. But this clear coat, you take this little red cap. I haven't done it yet, so let's take this thing here, and I guess this canister has two different areas inside of it, two different reservoirs. Take this cap, you press it down onto the bottom. I can't do it now because I'm not ready to clear coat. I could because you have 24 hours. But once I push that down, it will release the hardener into the clear coat. Shake it up real good, and then that is what's going to be put on as the clear. Now they said I needed to wait a half hour or more to put the clear coat on. They said not to do any wet sanding or anything between any coats, and then that will be it. And I'm going to probably I'll put a couple of clear coats on because this only lasts 24 hours, and then it hardens inside of the can. Another thing to mention is you just have to use a mask. Here in Florida, it sucks because, well, it's good, but it sucks painting with that mask on. Largely because it's still over 80 degrees, probably 82 degrees here in Florida, and it is December 4th. So we're going to have a beautiful winter, and hope y'all make it down to Florida someday, get to ride. Okay, it's been about a half an hour now, so I'm getting ready to go ahead and put the clear coat. So I've taken the little red thing out of the top of this thing's cap, and I'm going to stick it in the bottom, which will release the hardening agent, and then I'll shake it up. Not sure how it actually works, but something like that. Maybe I gotta hit it on the floor real hard. Let's see. Okay, for the clear coat, I pulled that little cap out of the top, and I guess you just put it in the bottom here, and you push it down. And you can hear it, you probably can't, but it releases a hardening agent into the body of the can, or the main reservoir. And then it says to just shake it up. So I'll do that, and then I'm going to go ahead and clear coat it. We'll see what it looks like after. And here's where I've sprayed back between the bunks and back by the pump tunnel. And all I got to say is I'm very impressed with the paint and the paint can. I've only done up to this brace, and I'm going to continue on. But just a very light coat is all I'm doing. I'll put about 3 very light coats on before I clear coat. Okay, it's hard to see with the light, but anyway, let me get up close. You can see how I haven't done such a good job in some spots. If you wanted a factory finish, you'd have to do a lot more work than I've done. So that's the way it is. Now, this paint is going on beautifully, and it's hard to resist not just hitting some spots that are just scratches, because frankly it fills the hole, it fills the scratch a little bit, I think, and at the same time any bit of little bit of white that might show through goes away. But you can see, obviously, I am not on a clear factory finish or anything like that, but I also have the thickness of everything restored. And it is pretty smooth. I can't touch it or anything right now, obviously. But I'm going to put another 2 layers of paint on. I'll let it dry for a half hour, and then I'll start with the clear coat. Let me show you a spot that I did touch with just paint. Well, first clear coat is on. Actually, that paint and the can are pretty amazing. So it's come out really pretty. It's really hard to tell with this light shining on everything. You can see where there are obvious imperfections in how I feathered out where the fiberglass mat was. This is enhanced by a great deal by the way that the light is hitting it, but it's there. There's no question about it. But if you look down the length of the hull, it's actually pretty good. And that goes all the way down to the pump tunnel, and you can see how it's pretty much all blended in pretty nicely. Let me show you the gouges. That's not so nice. So here what I did was I got, like I said, I smoothed it out. Now you can see, you cannot see anything having to do with where that one little dink was. And that happened actually in a very weird way where I hit the side of the hull there. But anyways, it's gone. And the way I did this is I took, because I didn't want any overspray on this part of the hull or anything like that. And I couldn't show you as I was doing it. What I did though was I took my drop cloth and I held it with one hand kind of above where I was then spraying back and forth with my right hand. And in that way I was getting no overspray. You can see how this is where the cloth was, and so no overspray got onto this area of the ski. So I'm going to do that one more time, and then I'm going to pull the tape off and see how that looks. I might decide to go ahead and feather it a little bit. I could do that. I could go ahead and let it dry completely and I guess wet sand it to get rid of any edges. But I don't think that's going to be necessary with this paint. We're going to find out though. And here are the gouges. Now you can see that the ones towards the back have all but disappeared. I mean, that's really good. I mean, I can't even tell that they're there. Can't run my finger over it yet. You can see the slightest bit right here because of the glare, but nothing of any significance. Actually, that's tape residue, I think. Yep, sure is. So that'll come off. Here's the bad one. Nothing I can do about it right now. It's just downright nasty. So I'm just going to let that one be. It just didn't, for whatever reason, it just did not want to work for me. And it's a seriously terrible repair, but it'll have to do for now, and then we'll take care of some more of that later. When you look at the paint all the way down, you can see that now the hull looks considerably better. Once it's buffed and painted out, I think it's going to look terrific. Of course, I won't do that probably for a couple of days. I have things to do. You can see where, if you look closely, there are still scratches there. Those were never touched. They were just very superficial, and I'm not going to mess with those. I'm just going to leave them be and go from there. There was a scratch right in here that actually looks better than the rest of the hull because it was taken care of and painted. And like as an example, this spot right here was not. So theoretically, if you were to really want to make this thing right, in my opinion, and that's not worth much, you can certainly, with a little bit more effort, I think, not a whole lot more effort than I put into it, you could refinish the entire hull to look just like a mirror finish. If you look down the length of the hull, you can see it's looking pretty good. I mean, from the top to the bottom. Now, of course, my keel is much thicker than it was before, which it needs to be because I do beach it. I jump over freaking logs and alligators. So it's just the way you do here in Florida if you're riding very much. Well, while I'm waiting for this to dry, I let it dry for a few minutes. It's got to wait a half hour before the clear coat. I decided to open the garage door, a little bit of fresh air in here. I've been ventilating it with just the slightest crack at the bottom of the garage door and a fan going, but still gets quite a bit in here, and I've been using a mask. So anyways, thought I'd give you a shot. Here is how things look as of right now. Not too bad. You can see right in here, most of those scratches you're looking at, those are scratches that were there that I never repaired. Okay, so it is what it is. Now you can see, if you get down and look at the keel of the hull, I do have some lumps and things like that in my finish. So it's certainly not perfect. It's certainly not professional, but it certainly is thicker than it was before I did the repair. So that's where that is. Now, as I was spraying, doing the clear coat down there, I decided, you know what the hell? I just sprayed basically down the entire length of the hull on everything. I figured the worst case is that it's just going to wear off. It might flake off, and that's definitely a possibility, but probably not going to happen. And the benefit would be is it just makes it blend and does make the scratches harder to see. I have scratches that I'm not trying to repair. This is the area where I hit the bow, if you remember, and man, I'll tell you, you can't hardly even tell that there was any sort of scratches in this area whatsoever now. And that's just without polishing, without doing anything to it yet. So I'm pretty impressed with that. You can see that it's a little bit rough. It's not a nice smooth clear yet, but it will be once it's been polished and waxed. And all the way down through the same way. It all has to be compounded. But that won't happen for a couple of days. And my only major disappointment is that one gouge that for whatever reason it wouldn't dry if you looked at the video, which is right there in the middle of the picture. So that I'm not going to do anything with right now. I'm going to go ahead and just let it be, and I'll work on it. But the other gouges that were just as deep and almost as bad are completely gone. I mean, you can't tell there was anything down there. I won't take you through the buffing and polishing steps other than to say that you know, it will make the hull look even more awesome. Not that it looks that great, but it's way better than it was before I attempted my repairs. I have every confidence that this will have to be done again. Well, this is the last installment, and basically I'm wrapping it up. I'm actually taking it riding on quite a long trip tomorrow on the St. Johns River in northern Florida. As you can see, the hull is pretty much done. What I've done is I did some additional sanding. I also went down and bought myself a buffer polisher that you can see right there. I've had them before, but I needed more power than I have on the one I have now. So anyways, everything looks pretty great. It's not, of course, the factory finish. Never intended to be. But this side of it has already been buffed out and has one coat of wax on it. It'll probably get 2 or 3 coats more. And as you can see, it looks nice and shiny. The underside where the patches are certainly rougher than the flat, and I don't think you can see it, but let's get it down in there. And there you can see the hull. Looks pretty good. It's not. You can see the reflections of where it's rough, like right there is the tip of the fiberglass mat. There was really nothing I could do to completely blend that in, and it shows up actually considerably more on the camera than it does when you're just looking at it for some reason. Anyways, that's where it is. I have not buffed and polished all the way down to the pump tunnel yet, so you can see it still looks pretty rough. And then looking down here where the gouges are, you can see, there's still a little wax on this one. Actually, that's not one of the gouges. Up in here, where these gouges were originally, they are very smoothed out now. Obviously, can see them a little bit. And this is that one gouge that I've never been happy with. You can see it's still very, very rough. And man, I'll tell you, I don't know what the heck I could have done more with it. But the next time I have to do this, I'm going to certainly pretty much grind that on back out and start all over again on it, but for now it's just got to do. But the rest of it I'm very happy with. The ski actually looks many times better on the underside than it did, obviously, because it's been patched up and painted where it's appropriate. And while it's not the glossy finish of the factory, it is a very nice looking finish, and it'll do. So hope this does you well, gives you some confidence to go give it a try. And we'll see you online.